everybody, and welcome to Building Bridges, Discovering Your Path to Peace. Today, we are honored to have a special guest and my friend, Dr. Peter March. Peter has a PhD in psychology. He taught psychology for in excess of 30 years.
Philosophy.
What did I say?
It's always psychology.
Psychology, shit, we gotta start again.
Okay. Oh no, you just make fun of it. Well, right. I don't know about psychology. I'm pretty good at that, but it's really philosophy.
Oh dear, Peter. Oops. Sorry, that's right. He's my philosophy prof anyway. I should have gotten that right. Anyway, we're so happy to have Peter here with us today. And not only is he an amazing philosopher, but he's also a columnist writer in local newspapers and has been for many, many years. So without any further ado, welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had posed 3 questions to my potential interviewees and about peace, and that is, can peace exist in the absence of justice? Can justice exist in the absence of equality? And can equality exist in the absence of understanding? It can be quite a conundrum, but you know, we have the expert here to figure it all out for us. And Peter is going to talk about the philosophy of peace.
Yes, and I have quite a vigorous alternative to the peace theories that are running around today. I think a lot of us were surprised when the movement, the 1% movement, got going. And for the last 10 years, we've been throwing mud at the capitalists who have done really, really well, the billionaires, saying that they have stolen the money. That was said the other day in Congress, that they affect politics, that they are a blight upon the nation, they are extortionists, etc. In other words, we've got a real problem in capitalism, and where there's a problem in capitalism, you can expect trouble, serious trouble, not peace. I would want to argue that a capitalist is very much like a sports person, a professional sports person. You may be made nervous by the fact that sports persons are given $1 million for a game or something. Well, capitalists at the top of the triangle.
Their game.
It's their game. It's their game,
yeah.
Indeed. And the game is won when you have the biggest number of dollars. And just as a sportsman wins when he has the greatest number of goals, etc. So there's no justification whatsoever for the claim that the capitalists at the top are greedy. Why? Well, because if you examine my life, your life, and one of theirs, you will find that they actually consume only an insignificant more amount than you and I. Because you can only eat so much. You can only wear so much. You can only have 2 or 3 big houses. Now, if you took all the capitalists, which are about, the big billionaires now run to about 56 in North America, if you took all their stuff away from them and distributed it fairly, as the 1% theories go, you would make no difference to the welfare of Canadians or Americans, individuals or groups. Because even with all the money they have, and with the little time they have to spend it, even so, they don't accumulate enough to make a difference in the economy. What they have is an enormous amount of money, which they invest. Now, if they don't invest it, they can put it in a bank. The bank will invest it. And if they don't put it in the bank, they can give it to a broker. And a broker can invest it. Can it just lie in a basement and molder? Not necessarily. It's very difficult to hang on to money. It runs around. So I think the greatest danger to capitalism is violence, peacelessness, resulting from the envy and the misunderstanding of how the capitalist system works and why it works so well. Number two, I'll try to be quicker this time. Number two, if you follow the money, as they say, and they never do, suppose I put $100 in a bank in Truro, a little village in Nova Scotia. What happens to it? Very likely it's instantly used by someone in China. I would give it a 1/10 of a second. Why? Because the instant the bank has more money, they lend more money. And when they lend more money, somebody somewhere in the world gets money. And when they get money, they invest it again. Thus, in the modern electronic systems of commerce, money is not located anywhere. It flies at the speed of sound and the speed of electricity and the speed of light.
Yeah.
So there isn't any great reason to think that somehow they are accumulating it. They don't accumulate. It's bloody silly. What they do is they put it in stocks and it immediately disappears into a company. Where does it go? Mostly it goes to places where employment is cheap. And the reason it goes to places where employment is cheap is because capitalists are always looking for cheap people to be employed. And thus the money goes to build businesses, buildings, and buy equipment and services for the people who are low paid. Where are they right now? Well, for a long time it was Chinese, but now the Chinese have got onto it and they're doing it themselves.
But Peter, isn't that a major reason why people would resent those 56, 57 people in North America, say?
Because their money ends up somewhere else.
Yeah, well, because they would employ cheap, and the money wouldn't be here in Canada or US if you're talking about the West. And also, isn't it that the whole fact that these few people control everything, not only the money, but the government, business, industry, our whole lives, right? And we have no say in it.
I don't beg to differ, but I would beg to doubt. The notion that they have political power, if it's true, should be blocked. In other words, they should, if they choose to be extremely wealthy to play that game, well, like sports persons, they will be blocked from certain things. They can't go on the ice with knives. They can't go on the ice with in the playing field with truncheons or guns. It's not on. It's the same thing with a sporting person who makes great amounts of money. They need to be blocked in some of the purposes which they might take for an enterprise, which is to win to help a politician win, which will give them even more money.
But isn't that theoretically in a perfect world?
Well, we try to create a perfect world, certainly, and having a conception of the ideal state is part of all the discussions that we would do. Now, we never get there, of course.
Why don't we?
Well, we don't get there for the same reason that you can't get to complete and perfect peace, for example. You can't get to complete and perfect justice. In the West, we understand in Western philosophy that those great and valuable objectives are never actually reached. And in fact, we don't know what it would look like for there to be perfect justice. It'd be like having a look at heaven, I suppose. If you could always impose the right event where there's a legal dispute, that would be very odd. We'd be astounded at some of them. And an awful lot of them would be new to us in that our laws are very incomplete. The perfect set of laws would have all kinds of things in it I could list, which it doesn't at the moment.
Tell us about Macchiavelli and
Well,
peace.
Machiavelli. I grew up in Italy, so the Florentine. He lived just outside Florence, but Machiavelli lived among the upper classes of Florence. I suppose during the 18th century or earlier than that, perhaps. Yes, a little earlier. And what he did was to ask himself, how should a leader become the leader in a city? Because in those days, it was cities that you tried to grab.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you grab Florence? And Machiavelli wrote a book called Il Principe, the Prince. And it's his advice as to how the prince should do it. And it's just absolutely extraordinary. It's like reading an anti-Bible. I'll give you one example of his advice to the prince. On a regular basis, determine who your strongest opponent is. Have him arrested or taken. Bring him into the jail or the military places. Cut him up. Oh yes, familiar? Cut him up. And then lay his parts in the center square, ideally on one of the most popular benches, so that everybody will see it, the mess, the slime, the bits and pieces of
Oh my God.
whoever. Now, in other words, he was what we would call an American pragmatist. He simply asked himself what was the most effective way to get this job done of becoming a leader. And he answered it correctly, because in Florence, there were no police. It was a violent, extremely creative, apparently religious, Christian religious little city. And it produced the greatest art of the Western world by almost anyone's judgment.
Yeah.
Including wonderful music and wonderful paintings and wonderful sculpture. Well, you should just reading about Florence is one of the fascinations of Western history.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's Machiavelli. Machiavelli is simply an American pragmatist.
That's his philosophy of peace, how you attain peace and order, I suppose, control.
Well,
all
order.
of those things.
He didn't kid himself that he was doing peace, but he was doing order. And if he could do order, of course, he could have banking. And then once you've got banking, you've got an enormously powerful thing, which is still evolving and which works extremely well. And I want to answer the question you asked before. If the capitalists constantly look for the lower paid,
yes,
then I should complain about it. I would say that means that their capital goes continuously, exactly like money from a charity. It comes from America and goes to people who have no jobs,
yes,
who are underpaid, who have no medicines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Somewhere in the globe. Well, on that line, of course, capitalism explains why Thailand is now wealthy, why Japan is now wealthy. I mean, we blew her up, then we rebuilt her with capitalism. And we did the same to hundreds. India. Britain did it to India.
Absolutely.
And to Pakistan.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about the capitalist is that he or she does look for the low paid, because that is a symptom of poverty, and pours money into it.
Tell me, is conquer and divide, is that part of capitalism?
No, that was part of capitalism during the British Empire. And we see historically it was also part of Belgium colonialism. Britain was a colonialist force, and Belgium was simply the worst ever, much worse than the Nazis. People have no idea. But in any case, the arrangement of capitalism around the world is one of the great discoveries of human beings, not because it makes people rich, but because it spreads wealth across them. And I have proof, because if you look at the 20th century when capitalism actually boomed, you will see country after country becoming capitalist and wealthy. And guess who was poor? China. It was one of the jokes that whenever the boy didn't eat his dinner, you said to him, "Oh,
I would send it to China."
I'm going to send that to China. They're starving.
Yes.
They'll appreciate it.
Yes.
You sign.
I remember that well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems insane to argue that capitalism is a greater force than the welfare state, greater force than charity, for good. It has rebuilt China in 10 years.
Yes.
It has built India out of nothing. Literally, they were very, very poor when the Brits moved in. And what did the Brits do? Oh, well, they put in railways. They put in administrators. They taught them how to use all kinds of instruments.
They did city planning, which is very unusual in India.
Right. So I find myself a rare animal and a greatly despised animal. I'm a supporter of capitalism, and I think the people who are against it are simply ignorant.
They don't understand. I agree with you, because I tend to feel as you do. It makes the most sense to me. And where does it get perverted along the way?
It gets perverted in the one you mentioned. You nailed it. Obviously, a capitalist in his or her own country, having a big wad of money means that he or she can support, for example, an election. We see an American potentate from New York at the moment who owns various magazines and made billions. He mumbled the other day that, yes, he will run for president, but, well, you know, money is no object.
Bloomberg?
Yeah. Now, that's devastating. You don't want people to win because they've got the support of the wealthy. You want them to win because they have certain values and energy.
But can they have both?
No.
Blumenthal's done a lot of good for New York City, mayor 3 times in a row.
Yep.
And, you know, he's concerned about the climate and guns, the violence in the US.
You mean he's a Democrat?
Well, he's a self-made billionaire as well, right? So, yeah. So you can't be both, you don't think?
Well,
you have to be one or the other.
There's no great harm in there being one person, like say the Koch, one of the Koch brothers. Koch.
Yeah. Koch.
I mean, there's no harm in that. There's no harm in a Bloomberg. There's no harm in a Vanderbilt. I mean, we know when a capitalist decides to take control of his or her own country or somebody else's country using money. Now that's, I admit, a real danger in capitalism. So what do? Well, the answer is we have laws against bribery. When a capitalist gives money to politics, he or she is bribing.
Oh, Peter. Peter.
That is a simple
You're so current.
That's the truth. And gosh golly, couldn't we have a law against capitalists giving money? And some tiresome person will mumble, "Oh yeah, how are you going to stop them, babe? How are you going to stop them?" The answer is, well, the law isn't perfect. It hasn't stopped all the theft for the last 1,000 years, all the murders, etc., etc. The law is not complete, but we can do a good job. And we're not doing anything at the moment to block them. Not in America. They are blocked in Canada. Now, look at Canada. Do you really think that we don't have control of the money going into political parties? You're damn right you do, because the other party says, where did you get that money?
Yeah.
Where did you get it for that bus? Where did you get it
Yes.
for that advert on television or whatever it is?
Mhm.
In other words, there's a quid pro quo for anyone trying to bribe a Canadian party,
Mhm.
because in the party's behavior, it will be immediately obvious to everybody that they've got a secret source of money. And it
Mhm.
shows in the buses, it shows in the adverts, it shows in the way they dress.
And they'll be called out right away.
They'll be called out. Now, in America, they are called out, but it's legal.
That's right. And it doesn't matter a damn, actually, it
And
seems.
it's a disastrous effect on peace.
Yeah.
If you want to know what is the most likely poison to take a peaceful society into revolt, of course, it's what America is doing.
Yes.
Giving greater and greater poverty
Excuse me.
to one group and greater apparent wealth
And
to the other.
pitting one against the other.
And they're saying, they say quite openly, it's outrageous. My son lives down there,
Mhm.
and he thinks that it's very likely, more likely than not, that there will be open gunfire in a reasonably short time.
It's
Now,
pretty scary.
that happened once in the Civil War, and it was one of the most destructive, diabolical, cruel wars ever pursued. And it proved absolutely nothing, and it wasn't the reason for the...
Again, it was the brother against brother. It's what happened with India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
Same thing, all politically motivated.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you could say that anyone who doesn't see the danger of capitalism in the politics of the world is a crook. No one could be innocent enough to think that we want our countries controlled by the billionaires. You simply pass a law against it.
Yes, yes. But it's very interesting because when I went to India and I was told corruption was everywhere, corruption was everywhere. It was in your face every day and everybody knew it. But nobody did anything. You know why? Because the little guy on the street, the little
Wasn't paid enough.
taxi driver, whatever, was getting a piece of the action anyway to do what was not in the best interest of the group. So if you stop corruption, you took money out of that guy's pocket, food off his table.
Yeah.
So no one is going to agree to that because it hits them at home. And that's the way the whole bloody system works.
It is.
How do we get around that?
Well, I'm ready for that.
Good.
I have it in my heart.
All right, then.
Here's what needs to be said. I grew up in Italy, and Italy and India are Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, including my family, were in on the take. And we were British, but nevertheless, we instantly understood the name of the
You
game.
fit right in.
Oh, yes. So, well, actually, my father was idealistic, and he ended up having to leave. But in any case, I think we have to realize that just as an automobile wears out and needs to be taken to the dump, and the good bits extracted and the bad bits thrown away,
Mm-hmm.
you can wear out a good country. You can corrupt it. And once you've got it corrupt, it's anyone's guess how you're going to stop it when 90% of the people have already given up their commitment to honesty.
Yes.
And
It's
fairness.
just become a way of life.
It's become a way. But
yes.
That means that places like India may be incurable. And America may be incurable. In other words, the idea that someone with tons of money can't do something with the money is anathema to them. They think, it's his money. He earned it. Why the hell shouldn't he do what he bloody well wants with it? To which the answer is, because he will go into politics.
Yeah.
And you won't like the result of that.
Yes. So how do you explain the the mentality of those people who are in the US who support Trump and what he's doing?
Because he's doing basically all the right things. I know he's very unpleasant. I know he has horrible values. But the actual laws that he's passed are pretty valid. Take the wanting to build a wall.
Yeah.
Well, everybody builds a wall around their house. Fences are everywhere. You and I are sitting in a big block, but there's a fence around that block. And why is it there? Because it's a way of saying to people and rubbing it in that we want control of who comes here. We want control. Now, can they climb over the walls on our apartment block? Yes, but no one does. There's no point to it. The wall is enough to persuade people to stay away. Not 90%.
Peter, are you saying that you think that the wall is a good idea?
Oh, yeah. Symbolically, it's the one way which you can say to Mexico, look, this is the edge of our country. You don't come in without our permission, period. It doesn't matter if you're starving or being driven by somebody else's gun. This is our country.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but the way it was being handled in this administration is that people were not given due process. And there are asylum rights that people have.
And that's always been the case. It's
always. It's a universal law.
Yes, but it's not Trump.
You asked about Trump. No, I know. But he's changed all of that.
Oh, yeah.
People caged, little children and all of that, and people dying.
They've been doing that for years. They've even made movies about it. I mean, the brutality of American policemen is legendary in Hollywood. Everyone has been told. It's the same as these women, the Me Too movement. I was told that I could not go into the movies twice by my father. And the reason given was that he did not want me to be brought up in that kind of a society. And what did he mean by that kind of? He meant a corrupt and cruel place, because we knew some of them, and I was only 12 years old, so I had to be protected. The women in America, in Britain, in France, in Italy, all were told before they had their periods, I'm sure, well, there's a problem. You might want to be an actress, but it's hard for a woman because actresses really have to get a job, and it's usually with them conditional on providing sexual services. Everyone knew that. Everyone knows that it continues to this day.
And your point is?
The point is that if they go with that in mind, that they will only get work as women if they're willing to give their sexual services for nothing, then the people who got the sexual services are not doing rape. What they're doing is prostitution. That's fine. Hit them for prostitution. She made a deal. Because tacitly there is a deal in the vulgar world of now, my son's been an actor and made zillions, and my uncle-in-law worked for Walt Disney and was an actor in some of his big movies. There's a whole bunch of actors in my family and people with whom I'm related. And we'll all attest to that. That's been the way since Kingdom Come.
Well, you know what? I can appreciate your point when it comes to the film industry. I know that it's been going on forever and ever, and as you say, it's still continuing. And
boy, you're a radical saying that, a woman.
Well,
good for you.
No, but it is. Look, yeah, I believe in saying how it is, but at the same time, I was a rape victim, and it was somebody that I know who was a friend of mine who drugged me, and I never told anybody because I thought it was my fault.
Yeah.
I did. I thought it was I must have done something, said something. I never even told my best friend, who was the friend of this
Oh,
person.
I'm going to get into trouble if you keep that.
You know? But anyway.
The fact is, suppose I acted like women act. Let me give you.
Just a minute. Let me finish my point.
You just did stop.
No, I know, but
I grabbed the brake.
You jumped right in there. Hold on there, Mr. Peter. Yeah. So what I'm saying is there has to be, again, a communication, an understanding, a dialogue.
There is.
Well, and
it's yes very clear what it is. Everyone's known what it was. Now,
no,
you never agreed to being raped.
No, I did not.
I made that exception. I said, not someone like you. But if you choose to go into the theater, you are going into a brothel. That's the reality. I think you need to go in with your eyes wide open. Yes.
And that doesn't mean that you have to give your very soul for that. There will be some who will. I understand.
They have to give their soul.
Oh, well,
they don't have to. Prostitution is fine with the feminists. Yes. That's the other side of the argument, is that you women have argued methodically, and I think very perversely, that prostitution is hunky-dory. If a lady wants to sell her body, she owns the body. Why shouldn't she use it for profit? Well, we could discuss that another day.
Well, that's definitely a different topic and for another day.
Let me now say what I wanted to say.
Oh, go ahead.
If I behaved like women do, I would construct something behind my flies. That's the opening where I pee, which would make my penis stick up the way you guys do with bras. Now, I know you do it for comfort. I know no, you don't get away with it. I'm not one of your cheap television talkers. I talk philosophy straight.
You are quite available to do that, and fine. It's no issue.
Let me go on. Let me go on. Okay, then I would take spandex rubber and put it over my backside, so you could literally see the pimples on my bum. That wouldn't be all. I would start painting my face. Oh, imagine a man painting his face with his penis sticking out and his butt wiggling in the wind. Now, that's only a scarce beginning. Wait until you think of how you dress in hot weather. Well, we don't dress that way. We wear floppy bang. No, yes, there are Speedos, but they're gone. It was very short. We had the wit to get rid of them. But in general, the whole Me Too movement is very much like the way people treat capitalism. It's just junk, intellectual junk. And it's kind of tragic because once you start telling lies and misleading people, misrepresenting them in the name of anything, including morality, your nation's going down the glug-glug.
May I tell you what I think about all of that?
Yeah.
It's the pendulum swinging off to one side and then back to the other side. And it eventually, through dialogue, through good communication, through understanding, through things like this and differing opinions, it's fine, isn't it? Because there's probably validity somewhere in what you're saying, somewhere. But if you can't express how you feel.
I think it's amazing that they're being put up for rape. Astounding. The woman is there knowing that was the price of getting her job.
Are you talking about the film industry again?
Huh. But I could go through a dozen things like that in America.
Come on, Peter. No, that's not fair. It's really not fair to women to say that.
I'm not here to be fair. I'm here to tell the truth.
Well, that's your truth.
Not my truth, no,
yes,
ma'am.
It's your truth.
Oh, no.
Yes, sir.
I have studied logic. I am being logical. I go by scientific evidence. It is not my opinion. I try to describe reality. And people don't generally do that because that's not their purpose.
Guess what? I cannot differ with you on a number of points because it is reality. And where it's all going to go, I don't know. First of all, repressed sex is a huge problem worldwide. So people, both men and women, will dress provocatively, etc., in order to express that that sexual urge, feeling, whatever that were. It's a life force.
The sexual wealth.
Yes. So their capital wealth, capital sexual wealth. They will express it because it will come, even inadvertently, it will come out because it's part of who we are.
That isn't the case. We have gone through long periods where sex, for example, in Puritan America, which is another subject, Puritan America did everything they could to suppress sex, to the point that when a man and a woman went to bed together in a big double bed, they put a hole in the plank that separated them,
yes,
so they could still have intercourse,
yes,
without any sexual pleasure. Now, that community lasted for a long time. It's perfectly possible to control sexuality. I'm not saying I want you to do it. I'm just saying it can be done. It can be done. We could run a society where women were safe. I think Canada is one such. One such. Amazing. I think we're incredibly fortunate in that.
Just very briefly, as we're closing, tell me why you think that about Canada.
Well, now, I think of that about Canada because I read Canada's history, not because I look at her the way she is today.
And also, what about all of the Indigenous women who have been raped and captured and taken away and disappeared and murdered and everything? What about that group of people? Well, they're Canadians.
I really don't. We don't have time to answer that. Okay. It's an interesting question. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with the people who are left over by the capitalist onslaught when you send your money abroad? And there's Indigenous people everywhere.
Yes.
And these Indigenous people don't even have a thought to use the capital that's sweeping over them.
Yeah.
And they become marginalized.
Yes.
Now, we could spend an hour. Yeah. I think that is a very, very difficult question. And it may be unsolvable.
Perhaps so for another time. But so in closing, what do you think we as individuals, a country, nations, the world can do to attain some kind of semblance of order which would lead to peace, where we can live at least side by side?
Well, my opinion is that the only hope is that people start thinking the way I've been speaking. It's a problem of philosophy. It's a philosophical mistake to think that the billionaires are by that bad. It's a philosophical error to think that women, because of their sexual organs, are stupid, etc. I think what's lacking in our society is the study of philosophy, because it's been supplanted in the past by the study of religion.
You know what? It's an excellent point. And I have to say, everybody, I attend Peter's philosophy class every Wednesday for an hour in the evening, and I've learned so much.
And I don't talk this much.
Oh!
It's true.
He lies.
Oh! Well, perhaps I do.
But you know what? It's a pleasure, Peter, to have you here today. Thank you so much. And I look forward to discussing other issues. And you know what, people? Philosophy is important. So I hope more and more people will take it in university because, hey, we can figure this out, you know, but we need to talk about it. And we need to share ideas, even when we are in somewhat disagreement. Doesn't matter. Who knows what you're going to learn? All right, well.
Can I just get a plug in?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
I use Facebook for publishing my columns now because I can avoid editors. I invite anyone who wishes to come to Peter March on the Facebook and start reading and arguing and discussing with me all these issues.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. You heard him. I hope you all do that. All right. So have a beautiful day, and may it be filled with peace. Namaste.
Namaste.